This week, I was flagged at work for exceeding my monthly AI token limit. As a punishment, I had to use Cursor's free model for the day while I waited for HR and finance to decide whether or not they'd have mercy on me. If you haven't used Cursor's free model, it says it's as good as the frontier LLMs. After using it, I beg to differ. But luckily, finance came through and they decided to give me some credits to get me through the end of the month. But the experience highlighted an anxiety that I've been having for a while now. If you work in tech, you've probably heard the term 10x employee. Well, after finding out I'm burning AI tokens like a 10x employee, I figured I'd better check to see if my high perception of my output actually matched reality. So I counted the number of tickets I created and closed in February 2025 versus February 2026. The results were shocking. I closed almost 4 times the number of tickets in February 2026 as I did in February 2025, and I went from 92% close rate to 125%. Picking up backlog tickets from previous months in the latter figure. At first, I was tempted to pat myself on the back. It may not be the mythical performance of a true 10xer, but 4x isn't too shabby, right? But despite it all, I still have 46 open tickets on my Jira board, and I'll probably create 3 or 4 more tomorrow. Am I bringing in 4x the value, or am I just burning expensive tokens at warp speed while running in place? To find the answer and what can be done about it, I looked in a few different places, most interesting of which is the story of a very poorly designed Swedish warship from the 1620s. But first, where are we at? Is everyone performing multiples of what they used to? Well, according to a recent study by a consulting group named ActiveTrack, the answer is a resounding, it's complicated. In a study they ran involving 1,111 organizations and over 163,000 employees over a 3-year period, they found some counterintuitive insights about AI in the workplace. The study cited that AI adoption is up to 80% and found that, quote, the data is unambiguous. AI does not reduce workloads. Every measured activity increased substantially. For example, time spent in chat and messaging apps like Slack increased by 145%. Ironically, time spent in business management tools like Jira similarly went up 94%. This confirms that the increase in ticket completion that I saw in my own work is widespread. The logical inference is that if 80% of employees are using AI and doubling the amount of time they spent messaging about and managing work, then we should expect productivity gains to rise as well. But do we? According to the study, the amount of productive time grew by 5%, while deep focus time dropped to 60%, which is a 3-year low. There are many factors that the study highlights for this drop, but 2 that are particularly interesting are actually 2 other studies cited in the ActiveTrack report. One from Microsoft and one from Gallup. Microsoft's 2025 Work Trend Index annual report cited that employees are interrupted every 2 minutes on average with meetings, emails, and notifications. The Gallup State of the Global Workplace 2025 report stated that employee disengagement fell to 21% in 2024, estimating a global $438 billion in lost productivity. Important to note that this ignores AI picking up the slack for a disengaged employee that can still direct the work. Together, this tells a pretty clear story. AI helps employees do more work faster. That means more coordination with other departments, more messaging, and more interruptions, all of which is leading employees to check out mentally and offload more and more of their decision-making to the AI with less and less emotional investment in the outcome. One founder of an AI company named Francesco Bonacci captured the essence of what it's like to work in this new environment. Quote, I end each day exhausted, not from the work itself, but from managing the work. 6 work trees open, 4 half-written features, 2 quick fixes that spawned into rabbit holes, and a growing sense that I'm losing the plot entirely. I certainly relate with this sentiment, but I can also understand how it merges with another surprising silver lining from the ActiveTrack study, which showed that while disengagement and focus is down, burnout risk has dropped to just 5%, which is a 3-year low. How can this be? While I can't speak for anyone but myself, I've seen this phenomenon play out in a duality of emotions. On the one hand, you're increasingly stressed by the chaotic and frenzied pace of AI-powered daily work, but on the other, you're able to stay out of the weeds and focus on intent. I've personally started speaking into the computer, describing complex problems out loud in great detail. This is actually a time-tested practice in software development known as rubber duck debugging. Wikipedia defines it as follows. Rubber duck debugging, or rubber ducking, is a debugging technique in software engineering, wherein a programmer explains their code step by step in natural language, either aloud or in writing, to reveal mistakes and misunderstandings. While primarily used in coding, it's relevant for any complex problem solving, and doing it with AI is massively more effective than using an inanimate object, like a rubber duck. When you get good at this skill, your AI chats start to feel like employees coming to you for direction, and your job becomes that of a dispatcher with big ideas who drops gems of wisdom before sending your minions off to execute. But it can quickly spin out of control when you have too many open threads or overcommit yourself to too many deliverables at once, which is extremely easy to do. The overall result is a bipolar balancing act between manic surges in productivity, which make you feel unstoppable, versus frantic rat's nests of half-done to-dos that you can't seem to make hardly any progress on at all. It's both exhilarating and mind-numbing at the same time. And after all this, we haven't even looked at what really matters in the corporate world. As yet, we've only talked about productivity, which the ActiveTrack study defines as time spent in productive apps and sites. And as stated previously, productive hours only increased by 5%, but it should be noted that that should compound per employee, and we would expect revenue to follow. So what's the bottom line? Yeah, another recent study, this one by the consulting giant McKinsey, stated that 36% of leaders reported no change in their revenues, with another 39% stating that revenue increases were a measly 1 to 5%. Now, obviously, we're still early. And in other surveys, CEOs have overwhelmingly stated that even if AI continues to fall short of revenue expectations in 2026, they won't abandon it in 2027. So like it or not, AI is here to stay. But clearly, things need to change or we're all going to end up in the loony bin. The good news is that the answer is simpler than you might expect, and it boils down to one word: alignment. When it comes to AI, everyone focuses on alignment between the humans and the AI, i.e., making sure that they don't kill all of us to make the world more efficient. While that's certainly an important problem to solve, it overshadows an equally important needed alignment. That is good old-fashioned human-to-human alignment. See, working at AI speed exacerbates a problem that has been plaguing humans since we first began trying to work together. Here's an example of when that problem was handled really poorly. In 1628, Sweden was locked in a war with Poland. The Polish king Sigismund III, Vasa, was actually the deposed former Swedish king, and he wasn't over it. He'd been deposed because he was Catholic, and the Swedish nobility of the day wanted a Protestant king. This led to the Polish-Swedish War starting in 1626. Now, Sweden was a rising European power at this point in time, but they didn't have a formidable navy, and therefore they couldn't secure the lucrative Baltic Sea trade routes. Furthermore, the new Swedish king, Gustavus Adolphus, wanted to prove that he was the true king of Sweden. He was actually the cousin of the Polish king. Naturally, the new king was feeling the pressure to do something big to prove that he was the country's official ruler. Then he had an idea. Two birds with one stone. He would create naval dominance and win over the minds of the people regarding who was the rightful heir to the throne of the House of Vasa. He proposed that they start building a ship. Not just any ship. This ship would be called the Vasa and was meant as a royal rebrand to convince any doubters of his legitimacy. Construction was actually started in 1625, and things were off to a good start until Gustavus heard that another enemy, the Danish, were building a large ship with 2 gun decks, prompting him to order the Vasa to be longer and wider and have more firepower. The new specifications were unstable and untested by the Swedish shipbuilders of the day. And because this ship was literally meant to be floating propaganda, Gustavus also demanded that it be vested with 700 large and heavy wooden sculptures to prove it belonged to the truest Vasa around. Finally, in 1628, the ship was ready for its maiden voyage. On August 10th, it got that chance when it left the waterfront of the royal palace in Stockholm. After 3 long years of painstaking work, it was finally at sea, ready to show the world, and it sunk. On the very first trip, in the first 20 minutes, the proposed crown jewel of the Swedish Navy and supposed symbolic proof of this new unproven king's right to rule unceremoniously sunk to the bottom of the harbor where it stayed for more than 300 years. How did this happen? Well, to put it in modern terms, Gustavus vibe coded a ship. He had a fleet of agents to do his bidding, and he sent them off without feedback or alignment. Because everyone knew that this ship was personal to him and his legacy, no one dared push back when he demanded things that they knew wouldn't work. He said what he wanted, and they tried to build it. Period. AI is not so dissimilar. It assumes it's dealing with logical beings who do things in logical ways. But we are not logical beings. We're emotional beings with egos who can, at times, be logical. And AI infused or not, initiatives rarely happen in a vacuum. If you create a lead engine system for salespeople at your company, people have to adopt it. You have to coordinate with the sales enablement team to map out the rollout. You have to work with sales leadership to design it and make sure it doesn't cause a revolt amongst reps. Leadership has to make sure it aligns with longer-term objectives, etc., etc. There are dozens of these bottlenecks for every project, and all of these bottlenecks are emotional in one way or another. Pumping out tickets faster with AI doesn't remove these bottlenecks. It just creates a massive backlog at the top of the funnel. That's why the main benefit reported by users of AI to date has mainly been around automating routine tasks. Why? Because they have fewer bottlenecks, fewer people involved. But by definition, the projects that mean the most to revenue have a lot of people involved. So what's the solution here? I believe it's the same as it always has been. We need human to human alignment, and the best way to start moving toward that is to get clear on why. Why are we building this? Who will benefit from it? How will it benefit them? Is this the most important thing we could be doing with our time? If so, why? If not, why not? This is a difficult thing for us to do because speed is so important to winning races, and make no mistake, everything in tech is a race. But AI creates a different dynamic that we must adjust to if we're serious about moving fast and making the biggest impact. We have to slow down to speed up. We need to become relentless about alignment. We need to establish regular checkpoints for every project where we can take a step back and rubber duck the progress to a stakeholder. We need to accept that this will come with increased scrutiny, more uncomfortable conversations. It will require more humility. We'll be tempted to feel like we don't have time to take a break for a status update. But I'm convinced that this is the only way to really start getting value from AI on the scale needed to make the massive investment worth it. If you want a more concrete framework for this and how it can help your implementation of AI, make sure to subscribe because next week I'll be looking at a process that Toyota used to solve this exact alignment problem on a massive scale. Thanks, and I'll see you next week.